Childhood Obesity Intervention, the NNN School-Based Garden Program by Lina Morvillo. Obesity rates worldwide have increased threefold since 1975. 63.4% of Australians 15 years and over were either obese or overweight in 2014. This places Australia at 9th place in the world ranking of overweight and obesity. In the period of 2017 to 18, the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare reported that 24.7% of children are either overweight or obese. However, high prevalences of overweight and obese children were presented in low socioeconomic communities. In Australia, 33% of boys and 38% of girls in low socioeconomic communities are either overweight or obese, and display marked increases when compared to children from high socioeconomic groups. Whilst high food intake coupled with low activity are the primary causes of obesity, the factors contributing to a higher prevalence in low socioeconomic settings are multifactorial and complex. These include factors such as genetics, low fresh food availability, which is sometimes referred to as fresh food deserts, convenience, taste preferences, perceived costs of fresh food versus takeaway food. A high BMI classifies one as either overweight or obese, the risk of which includes risks of developing non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. And for children, these risks include social isolation and low academic performances. Some degree of nutritional knowledge is required to motivate individuals into making healthy food choices, which is defined as food literacy and is shown to be lacking in low socioeconomic environments. The World Health Organization calls for the incorporation of nutrition education programs in schools to combat the rates of childhood obesity, and successful interventions incorporate a combination of nutrition education, physical activity, and parental involvement. This had led to the development of the Nature, Nurture, Nourish program, which is a novel intervention targeted at primary school children and involves the establishment of vegetable gardens, weekly nutrition workshops, cooking workshops, fresh food markets, and the general increase in incidental activity levels. The program will run for 2 years and will include both parental and local community involvement. The target group for our intervention will be the suburbs northwest of Melbourne, encompassing the city of Hume, of which 62% of its citizens are either overweight or obese. The overall goal of Nature, Nurture, Nourish intervention is to achieve a BMI reduction of 5% at the end of the program, leading to a reduction in the associated health risks for those children, including reduced risk of social isolation and their associated mental health factors, and potentially reducing the risk of carrying obesity into adulthood. Strategies will include the increased availability of consumption of fresh foods, leading to a decreased consumption of high caloric foods, increased food literacy, which will lead to better food choices and the favouring of fresh foods to packaged foods, including an increase in home cooking. An additional increase in physical activity via the tending to the garden, harvesting, and the distribution of food produce. So how did we go? The success of the program will be assessed against baseline data collected prior to the onset of the program. This will include the anthropometric measurements to assess BMI at baseline, surveys to determine baseline food knowledge of both the children and their families, their eating habits, and their general well-being. Cultural questionnaires will be distributed and considered during the project development. At the end of the program, we will repeat these assessments to determine the effectiveness of our program by seeing improvements from baseline data.